Welcome back, Team DWC. It's your boy TWP Popcorn. Y'all already know what time it is. Another day in paradise. Let's see. We got a weird way I'm going to do this video today. So, y'all know, bear with me. That way, one of these days when I get my editor hired and paid, he can come back and fix all this stuff for me. Or she, they, them, whatever the fuck I end up hiring, right? Shouts out to the people that I end up hiring, because we are hiring. You know, come get a job with your boy if you need one. Shout out to the big homie, though. Y'all know to go check him out over there on DJ Is or at DJ Is Beats. You know, he got more than one channel now, so y'all know to go hit him up for when those beats drops. That way y'all can catch it while it's new, right? Shout out to my intro. I'm gonna have to go get me another one, because you know I'll be getting from the big homie. Whether he send me one or if I just go ahead and let him know I'm gonna use this one. He'd be like, all right, bet, cool. Just make sure you drop the credit in the title. Yeah. Y'all know how we do. Let's look into our actual video, because we gonna bounce over to that. So let's see, Garden Talk with Mr. Grow It, featuring a RDWC and a DWC grower. So let's see, we gonna go through this. We ain't gonna play it at slow speed neither, so we can get through it.
Cracky is a fantastic growing method, but it's limited for certain plants. Changing the reservoir, the advice is anywhere from weekly to every 2 weeks. When I fill up my hydro buckets, I always fill them up 1 to 2 inches below the bottom of the net pot. It's not for advanced growers, it's for new growers. This is because it takes the grower out of the equation. How many times have you ever overwatered a plant or underwatered a plant? When you grow in deep water culture, that doesn't exist. There's no watering.
What's up, everybody? If you that don't know me, my name is Chris, aka Mr. Grow It, and you're tuned into the Garden Talk podcast. This is episode number 36. In this episode, I interview Mitchell from Visionary Hydroponics. He has been gardening for 7 years, and he's the creator of the Hydro Bucket, a deep water culture hydroponic system. He talks all about deep water culture, DWC, and recirculating deep water culture, or DWC. This has been a highly requested topic from you, the listeners, so I'm super excited to bring you this one today. Thanks to all of you who support this podcast through Patreon. If you'd like to support, you can do so by going to patreon.com/MrGrowIt. Before we get into it, I want to acknowledge that one of my goals for this podcast is to bring zero cost for information about gardening, all plants, to the general public. That being said, I'd like to thank the sponsors of this podcast who help make that goal possible. Spider Farmer is a sponsor of the podcast. Coupon code MrGrowIt5 will get you a discount on their products. They're most known for their LED grow lights, but they also have other products such as grow tents, inline fans, and carbon filters. I've used their SF1000, SF2000, and SF4000 LED grow lights in the past, and I got some great results with them. I will leave a link to Spider Farmer's Amazon store down in the description section below, and don't forget to use coupon code MrGrowIt5 for a discount on their products. Big shout out to AC Infinity for sponsoring this podcast. AC Infinity is well known to produce high quality products and provide excellent customer service. They have the thickest grow tent on the market today, inline fans with a controller that can automatically turn on and off according to specific set points. They have seedling mats, trimmers, drying racks, and several other products that you can use in your garden. I will leave a link to AC Infinity down in the description section below, and you can use discount code MrGrowIt during checkout for a discount on their products. Thanks to Dutch Pro for sponsoring this podcast. Dutch Pro products are now available in several countries across the world. For those of you that don't know, Dutch Pro is a plant fertilizer company that has base nutrients, additives, and pH regulators. They have different formulas of base nutrients for if you're in soil, or if you're in hydro or cocoa. They also formulate their base nutrients for if you're using hard water, or if you're using RO or soft water. I will leave a link to Dutch Pro's Amazon store down in the description section below, and you can use coupon code MrGrowIt10DP for a discount on their products. All right, we are.
Yeah, we back. But guess what? We gotta rotate, because we had this other thing to watch too since he paid his bills.
Remember, quitting drugs is viewed more positively than never taking them. Until we meet again!
Back. Welcome to the Garden Talk podcast. Today I am joined with Mitchell from Visionary Hydroponics. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. My voice is a bit raspy, so I gotta apologize to the listeners in advance. I was in a very smoky environment over the weekend, and it just got to me. So I lost my voice and a little bit raspy here. Hopefully you guys can stick through it. Luckily, I'm not going to be doing most of the talking. Mitchell's going to be doing most of the talking today, which is a good thing. We're going to be talking all about hydroponics. So this is a highly requested topic. I've had so many people over the past 30-something episodes that I've done so far, just TWC, TWC, RWC, hydroponics. So we're going to get into that today. Actually most of these questions came from me, but I did have quite a few people submitting questions through Instagram. So thank you to everyone who had submitted questions in through Instagram. A lot of great questions that you guys submitted in. And this episode is going to be awesome because I think we cover so much in detail. To all of you that wanted this DWC episode, I think you're going to like this one a lot. So I personally don't grow in DWC or any type of hydroponics. I have my concerns of my reasons for not doing it, which I think we'll address today, which we'll go over. Maybe they aren't actually legitimate concerns and I'm just overthinking things. But yeah, we'll get onto that later on into the episode. But first, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got into gardening?
Sure.
That's definitely one thing we all got to worry about is us overthinking, because sometimes overthinking will cause you not to take action when the number one thing you need to do is take action. You ain't going to learn nothing new until you do something new. So if you're going to be overthinking it, then you will probably never take the action you needed to take, which would have got you through the situation, because you got to get into it to get it done.
First off, thanks for having me so much. I really appreciate people who bring knowledge to people to grow at home, to grow in different ways, to grow different things. We're in an opportunity in the world now that a lot of opportunities are opening up for us. So thanks for having me on and just, sharing all the knowledge and what you do. So I got into gardening a few years ago. It was pre-legalization. I've always grown plants. I've always had house plants, but I just kind of let house plants, I keep them alive. I don't grow them so much. But pre-legalization in Canada, when legalization was announced, I immediately knew I was going to grow medical plants. I've always wanted to. I've always had a thing there. So I went out and I bought the Grow Bible and I started reading, and I came on to deep water culture. And so 2 years before legalization, I just started growing deep water culture in my basement, getting familiar with it, growing tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, anything that I could. So I knew when legalization happened.
Tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers. He just admitted to growing at home before they started the legalization process because he already knew he wanted to be ahead of the curve. Therefore, he said everything that sounded good, but we know he was growing weed also. You ain't just going to start growing and not grow what you meaning to grow. Well, I'm going to grow tomatoes because they're similar. Yeah, they similar, but they're not the same. Shout out to them tomatoes, though.
I had some experience and I was just going to roll with it. And that's what happened. Yeah, and I've been growing ever since.
Awesome. So we'll get into that deeper, hydroponics in particular. So you said deep water culture. A lot of people call it DWC. Yeah. What is DWC? And then there's also RDWC. Can you talk to us about those two things?
Sure, yeah. So the difference is it's one style of hydroponics. Hydroponics, there's lots of different styles. Deep water culture and recirculating deep water culture are the two, is what we're talking about. And a deep water culture is essentially a plant that is in some sort of medium suspended above a solution. And then that solution contains just the roots. There's nothing else down there except for roots and nutrient solution, and air stone being and oxygenating the air. And that's all. And then what separates a deep water culture from recirculating deep water culture is exactly that, is a recirculating system. If it's just deep water culture, it's just one container, and there's no pumps or anything. Nothing's moving. It's deep water culture. If it's a recirculating deep water culture, it's still deep water culture. Same principles apply, except now there's water moving, typically to an external reservoir, and there's reasons and differences between having and pluses and minuses of having an external reservoir versus simply just having everything contained in one container.
Okay, that makes sense. And now what equipment is needed? You said for DWC, it's just kind of a bucket in itself. I'm sure you need like a net pot. Within the net pot, there is a medium. Can you talk to us like in detail about what the different pieces of equipment are needed for those setups?
Yeah, absolutely. So for deep water culture, you're going to need a few basic things. You're going to need a bucket, something to hold your fluid. You're going to need something to hold your plant and your medium, and you're going to need an air pump, an air stone, and an air line. And that's it. That really is all that you need. Of course, then you need your nutrients and all the other stuff. But those are the basics. And you can really get into deep water culture it's quite an affordable thing to get into, but it's a little bit intimidating. I think everybody can speak to that, right? So
within those net pots, you can put different types of mediums, right? You can do clay pellets, clay balls, right? Hydroton, or you can do cocoa. Can you do soil? Can you do perlite? Can you do different types of medium within that net pot, or does it have to be a certain type?
Right, yeah. So typically what you need for deep water culture is you're suspending your plant above your nutrient solution, right? Your nutrient solution below is just roots, just aerated solution. And I would say, about 2/3 of your plant is submersed in that. That's your consumption section of your roots. Your upper portion of your roots is enclosed in a net pot.
Mom got the whole house smelling like something good. I don't know if she went to church this morning, but that Sunday dinner's already cooking, and it's going to be fire. If y'all want to pull up, make sure y'all pay y'all weekly plant class fee, and y'all can come get a plate on Sundays too. Y'all better sign up before Mom get to cooking though, so that way she knows to cook for you.
Form of apparatus. Some people call them the top hat. Those are the ones that are large, that contain the structure that holds the medium. So that is either going to be hydroton, which is the clay pellets. It could be rock wool. That's an inert medium that's up there as well. You could technically use anything to hold the plant above in the net pot. But you don't want to be making your solution dirty if you're using cocoa or you're using soil or anything like that. It can be done, but it's not ideal. It doesn't work well. It's best to keep everything really nice and clean and go with the inert mediums.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't even think about that. It could dirty the water if you're using something like soil, right? It just drips down in there. So that makes sense for why the people are using like hydroton clay balls and stuff like that, because that doesn't really drip down in there or anything. So
right, and that's one of the things is getting away to not introduce soil every time I've tried to introduce soil or cocoa, just for the experience in my garden. I find other things come accompany with it. When you're just dealing with rock wool and you're dealing with hydroton or an apparatus, say, that doesn't use medium at all, you now don't have to you're not introducing any organic critters, right? There's nothing alive coming into your garden. It's all washable, and so the pests are really easier to control in that manner.
Gotcha. Now you mentioned air stones, so that's one way of doing it. You have air stones within the bucket. It is oxygenating that water. That's key. That's going to one thing that's going to help prevent something like root rot. You know what I mean? Lithium, I think it's called, is the actual name of the bacteria in there that causes the harm. There's also the crack key method, which I believe is just there's no air stones, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. The roots are just sitting in the bucket, so you can actually get away with not using air stones at all. Can you talk to us about?
And cracky is the way I basically roll with my DWC system. I got plenty of airlines, air stones, and all that stuff from when I first started. But, me being a mad scientist, I went ahead and experimented after I learned about what cracky was. And I've stayed with that because the plants are going to grow with or without the air stones. The growth with air stones could be a little bit more better. But given that it's deep water culture, the plants are going to have a faster growth rate than any other type of growing, which, more growth is more growth. So if it's only 5% less more growth, I said 5% less more growth than having an air stone, there's no point in spending the money on the air stones. You can spend the money on a commercial. Shouts out to the commercials. Y'all know to go check out my level 2 Buy Me a Coffee members every Friday and Sunday over on Higher Desert Exotics. Y'all see it right here. They done hit 1.11K. So that means they're over 1,100. You know what I'm saying? We appreciate that. They had a giveaway last week. Y'all know to tune in if you want stuff for free, because I'm going to charge you for it. You know what I'm saying? But they got you on the hookups. Boom.
Yeah. So like Fox Farms though, like I noticed so if you're going to plant a plant in some Fox Farms ocean forest per se, you plant a plant in there and you veg it out for like 2 months and you get that plant monstrous and you're ready to flip it into flower. Now you have to add amendments to there because there's nothing left in it.
Well, okay, let's back up just a little bit. When you say you planted it for a couple months and it took off monstrous, do you know what's in that mix that makes that plant grow?
Synthetic salts.
It's pretty much what it is, but it's ammonium nitrate. So they spray this ammonium nitrate on sawdust, and that ammonium nitrate is like, it's like acid on a fucking slug. So think of the organic and biology that's in there. It's killing. They put that on there. You can throw a pile of that. It's called nitralized sawdust is what the industry calls it, as an amendment to mix it, and that's what they buy. Roots Organic, a bunch of them do that as an amendment, and that's their nitrogen pack. And then they tell you they put a bunch of guanos and they do other stuff. They don't put shit on it. That's what it is, and that's the reason the difference between a good quality soil and them. And you just explained it, is it shot up and it grew through veg and it did really well. But the thing it's missing is that now, like if you grew in my soil or some good soil, it's not always my soil, but the difference between mine, you're asking, and Fox Farm and all the case studies, Fox Farm with ammonium nitrate in the soil, that plant will shoot up really quick. It grows quick, and it's for tomato plants. Let's just call it tomatoes. We'll just do the tomato, but same thing with any other cultivar, is it shoots up really quick and it puts off a few tomatoes, and the wind comes and that plant has no structure and it falls over and it's lanky, right? Yeah. My soil versus the same tomato plant, you got a fucking heavy stalk. You got this plant that just fucking sits up and does its thing, and it's putting off tomatoes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the difference. And why does mine do that? Because I have a living soil concept behind it. I want you to grow with bacteria. I want you to grow with fungi. I want you to do everything that is healthy in that plant. The last thing you want to do is feed ammonium nitrates in a tomato to your kids at the dinner table. Once you know kind of, you know. So,
like you said, once you know kind of deal. Y'all know to go check out HDE, Higher Desert Exotic Podcast. Like I said, you need something free, let them know I sent you. Might win an award, a giveaway. You know, they do random stuff over there. All right, back to the chop it up session with Mr. Grow It, though.
The differences between the two, like kind of the pros and cons of air stones versus the crack key method?
Yeah, definitely. So crack key is a fantastic growing method, but it's limited for certain plants. The principle of crack key method is that you can mix a nutrient solution, and you could put your plant in your medium, in your lid, and then put that lid in your mixed solution in a container, and then there's no oxygenation, there's no disturbance, there's no pH balancing, there's no addition of anything. What you mix and what you put into that container is going to have everything the plant needs to get it to harvest. So that's really cool, but it only applies to certain things. Your leafy vegetables, and nothing that has to have a transition in its nutrient regime. So if you have a plant that needs vegetative nutrients and then has to switch to bloom nutrients exclusively and has different nutrients that is changing for effect, that's not going to work with cracky, because you're obviously working that in something that's a very long and uses intense amount of nutrients.
Now, when he says that, I remember the first time I watched this video, because I haven't done this video review yet, and I've had this in my playlist for since I started the playlist. Excuse me for being busy. Y'all know how I am. I was active as fuck with that workbook in 2024. Depends on when you watch this. You might feel me or you might not. But either way, like I said, the thing that I noticed with my marijuana plants, because I'm going to just go ahead and say it, in cracky, I don't change how I feed. So I don't do a flowering and I don't do a vegetative nutrient. I just feed water and CalMag all the way through. And I've noticed that I make it through grows. Sometimes they're not as good as they could be, but hell, I make it all the way through and get decent buds. So, you got to experiment and learn things just let people tell you, oh, well, this isn't good to, it needs flowering in, da-da-da-da-da. And I try some shit out and figure it out. I've showed y'all my plants before, and like I said, my last 5-6 harvests have been plants that have only had CalMag and water all the way through. Except for now, I'm doing this Gym 10 run. Shouts out to Gym 10. Y'all know to go check them out. Use popcorn at checkout, and you can get 5% off. And then, you know, that's what's up for y'all if y'all want to try using Gym 10. I ain't going to say too much about it right now, but, you know, we're still doing our testing and our research for them. So shouts out to the homeboy Corey. You know Corey kind of crazy, so don't mind him. But you know the plant food's probably good for you, so you know, careful who you fuck with.
And stuff is not going to work for Kratky, but it is cool. There is ways to use it for different plants, and also with cloning medical plants. It's there's some neat things to do with Kratky. So.
Okay, gotcha. Now, one of the top questions I had through Instagram was, can you grow organically using DWC?
Right. And that is, I would love to be able to grow in a pure organic sense. You know, that is just something that people, it's a big box to check for a lot of people. That's the one thing that allows people to really get into living soil and organics and just pursue that. I'm testing some nutrients right now, some fertilizers, and they are an organic line. But again, I'm just testing that right now. I don't use it because I found with organics, even introducing organic.
Now, what he just asked was about growing organically with DWC, because, you know, organically is basically you building your own soil, maintaining your own soil, and you know, you being 100% in control. Now, with DWC, that actually is easily available because it's the same concept that goes into regular organics. You see what I'm saying? The only difference is you would be mixing your nutrients like you would mix a tea for your, like a compost tea. You see what I'm saying? Other than that, you just put the self-made nutrients as per the tea into the water itself. Like, boom, get it mixed up. Make sure you put as much as you want in your bucket. Put some regular water in with it, and then that'll be your nutrients. It'll be a homemade nutrient solution. I'm working on some of those coming up to where, hey, you know, your boy got to work on products and services. So I ain't going to tell y'all too much till I got a couple more things. But yeah, it's very applicable because that's one of the things I know is high demand.
Amenities, you risk the run, or you don't risk. I mean, you have accumulation is what it is. You have to think of your water solution that you have as your deep water culture solution, and you have your roots and everything in there. And when you have organics that are physical compounds that are in there, you have to be careful how many things you add that create sticky into the water, right? That film, you can only handle so much, and then at a certain point. But I don't understand all the science, but anytime I've tried it, it's just you get an accumulation of gunk. You get and that goes in the opposite direction of when you don't. It's just nice and clean and white, right? You know everything that's happening. That's one of the things I love about hydroponics and deep water culture is that I mix it and I have full control and I know what's happening. Organics, I'm working on it. I think in years to come, and who knows, maybe very shortly, there will be some great organic products that work really, really well. That's around the corner, but right now.
But now, like he said, the worst thing about feeding random substances to your plants is they're going to fuck up your root zone, which is highly important. Like you just said, you don't want to put something in there that's going to literally have your root rot started because it's not fully broken down enough to where it can just be absorbed easily. So, you know, you got to do your research, see what the plant remedies are as far as how long you're supposed to let them sit in the water before you actually feed. Because they give you advice and tips on those types of things. But, you know, you definitely want to double check. And remember, you're going to take some risks. And taking risks either going to give you a good payout or it's going to give you a lesson. Shouts out to the lessons because they'll teach you something.
For ease of use, especially for new growers, I stick to some semi-organic stuff that's just fully dissolvable. So it's all about dissolvable, right?
Okay, that makes sense. And just kind of talking more about nutrients, I know like some organic lines, they're very thick. You mentioned sticky. They're going to clog the actual lines of the hydroponic system, right? So are there any,
Yes.
Can you talk about some nutrient lines maybe that you recommend that won't actually clog the lines?
Yes, if we're talking about a recirculating system specifically, right? And here's again going back to the difference between recirculating deep water culture and deep water culture. Deep water culture has its advantages because there's nothing moving. There's no pumps happening in your house. There's no external reservoir with lines and pressure and crevices and cleaning in between grows. It's just a bucket, right? That's the hydro bucket. That's why we made it. It's kind of getting away from that recirculating system, so you don't have accumulation. You have it all right in front of you, available to interact with, and this, I think, may lend to more, going down that line of organics and using stuff that is a little more gunky, because you can manage it on an individual basis per plant, right? And you have access down in front of the roots. You can actually see the roots as per design of the hydro bucket and the deep water culture vessel that it is. But right now I use crop salts. Anything that is any liquid will work well. Like so many people, I started off with GH3 part. Right? And then a lot of people start there and they start going up to maybe some nice expensive stuff like advanced nutrients. They work great. There's so many great nutrients out there, Canadian companies, American companies, European companies. But also then you can get into...
Now, as far as being a DWC grower, I'm going to let y'all know, when y'all first start off, it doesn't matter which one you start off with, because you're going to have to put in some work. But there are lines, like he said, like advanced, that have pH balancing, which actually balances out the water and the pH for you, which is highly useful. That means you ain't got to worry about checking your pH as much. You're still going to have to check it because the plant will naturally swing its pH, because that's one thing I've learned myself over time. Some plants are better at adjusting their own pH than other plants, which are the plants that I like to focus on growing myself, because if I see they can actually make it through the grow and I ain't really checked my pH, I know those are riders and they straight running their own pH. All right, send this back down to the water, pull up some of that if it's down there. Like, they going for specifics. Like, and that's what the plant does. That's what the root system does. It'll see what the plant upstairs is working with as far as energy, then it'll go down looking for whatever it wants to eat. I mean, they simple. They're going to do their own work.
Some nice dry nutrients, where for new users it's very nice and economical, where you get a couple sacks, they're going to last you a year, and you just don't have to measure multiple things when you're mixing up your solution. You just get to go so many grams of A, so many grams of B, and you're done. And that's the same throughout your grow. You just dilute it with water. So the big thing with nutrients, it really doesn't matter which one you choose as long as it's fully dissolvable. That's what you're looking for. It dissolves 100%, and it just looks like a nice clean water after. Maybe there can be color. I mean, many of the manufacturers use color, and again, that can stain your roots and make people think, oh no, my roots are brown or orange or whatever. But if you just choose a nice white, fully dissolvable nutrient line, then you'll just...
And that's what most people's problem with nutrient lines is, because they want those pretty white roots. But if you're using something with any colorant to it, I said colorant because it's color filament. You dig? We got vocabulary. You don't try to sit here and look goofy, trying to make me. I know how y'all be in the comment section. What the fuck is a colorant? Something you ain't never heard before, because you ain't heard plenty words. I'm a wordsmith, so we gonna keep it going. But anyways, if there's something that's gonna have your roots looking any other color, a lot of people get deterred from that, because now they think that there's a problem with their roots when it's literally just the food. I mean, outside of them not being that pretty white no more, they're eating good. They might not even be slimy, or because they're roots. They're always going to feel a little bit slimy. They're supposed to slide their way into things. Shouts out to them roots, though. Let's see. We'll stop and pay a bill right quick, because I believe Melinda Elliott was coming up next as far as our Buy Me a Coffee members. Shouts out to our Buy Me a Coffee members. Y'all know we got them in here, too. Challenge.
So this is day 3 of the KOV challenge. 3 days, 3 nights. 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 3 days, So one of the things that we're supposed to do is ask a question. And one of the questions I'm interested in is, what do you think about my channel? When I started this channel, I started it, well, for me, I'm a type A personality and I needed to relax. I have some disabilities that are related to stress. And it seems like people like them and watch them. But you guys tell me what you think. Bye.
Pick a strain, whatever you want, you could get. Indica, sativa, never rolling plain Jane. I know some people, if you want, drive 50, we ain't gon' cop any. Little mama got plenty, so many strain, puffing the flame, nothing but dro. One for the brain, one for the body, one for the soul. Running with strange, keeping the party under control. Up, away, flying, how far are we gonna go? Smoke team in the building, gotta miss what the deal is. Recognize coming with Burns, Felix with Filming County boy, got the liquor. Castle was on the fader, Stevie came with the greenery, mixing multiple flavors, whatever you want, homie. Tell me when to say when. How about you and your friends? Come get with me and my friends and keep it real with me, girl. I don't want to pretend like this is a new thing. Really, that's what it's been like.
All right, y'all got to hold up. I know those commercials be lit. You know what I'm saying? We have some lit ass commercials. Y'all know to go check out that big homie over on Mr. Cess Crew. That's ubiquitous out of the group here in Kansas City known as Cess Crew. Y'all know I fuck with them heavy.
Always be impressed with how they look.
So you can use liquid or powder as long as it's fully dissolvable, and then you're just kind of dumping them into your TWC system with the existing water that's already in there, or you're putting into a bucket, diluting it down, then dumping that bucket of water into your DWC system, right?
Yeah, I mean, so you know, I treat our DWC and DWC. There's a couple things that I've come across over the years, especially now that I have hydro buckets in my garden. You know, the whole reason that I created the hydro bucket was because here's what happened with with growing, is that I started growing like a lot of people. I chose deep water culture because I heard of how awesome it is. It worked for me that I could grow in my basement. I could be clean, right? There's no coming and going with soil and mixing and stuff. I didn't have room for that. I could grow my 4 medical plants, and deep water culture worked for me. So I went out like anyone. I'm a home grower, and I don't want to just go out and spend lots of money. And this is one of the challenges of deep water culture and hydroponics in general. Is if you wanted to enter hydroponics, there's a pretty good price tag to that, right? Especially a recirculating system. You're either going to spend.
Now, it can be expensive, but if you DIY and know how to DIY for a lower price, it's not really that bad to get into. I believe I did bucket pricing recently, and for about 20 buckets, it was over $115 just for the buckets. That's not adding in net cups, that's not adding in hydrogen, and that's not adding in anything else you want to add in. That was just buckets. Now, those are the buckets I'm currently using, but y'all get what I'm saying. Like, you definitely want to know what the things cost before you try to get into it. But then that's why you consult with me, because I already have the simple, easiest, bare necessities way to get you set up priced for you. But if you want to get a system to where, hey, I just want to go ahead and get my final system, I'll just spend it all once. I'm not trying to go through a learning experience. I just want my plants to look good for what I got my system set up for. Because your system makes it to where how much work you're going to have to do partially, because, you know, there's things called fully automatable systems out there. You see what I'm saying? To where you put the plant in, the only thing you got to do is put the plant in the system, and then the system will take care of damn near everything else, except for you adding water to it.
Spend quite a bit of money on a recirculating system, or you're going to go a DIY route. And so that's what I did, is I went the DIY route. This is one of the very first buckets that I made. I went and got the bucket for $5. I drilled the thing. I got the grommet, you know. But a lot of people we're talking about a DIY people versus growing people, right? And not everybody has a drill. Not everybody has all these things. So deep water culture has kind of been overlooked for that reason, right? But what happened was, after going into getting this, I found I have to lift my plants. I have to jeopardize yield. Every time I have to change this nutrient solution, I have to lift a big tomato plant or a pepper plant or cucumber plant, and it's a bit of a disaster to be able to get into here. So what do you do to solve that? Is you go to a recirculating system. You hook up plumbing to your buckets so you have an external reservoir outside of your tent, outside of your environment. So now you can service all of your nutrient solution that's going through all 4 plants from your external reservoir. Right? And that works well, because now you can scrog your plants. You don't have to worry about loss of harvest, because you never have to lift the top anymore to access for fluid changes or anything, right? It's all controlled in the external reservoir.
Now, the only bad thing about what he just said about switching from DWC to RDWC, like he said, it's a lot of benefits, but then the same bad benefit is if you're one of those people that likes to clean out their buckets because your nutrient solutions are colored. You see what I'm saying? They're colored, which made your roots turn colors. Then you're going to have to get in there, clean some stuff out anyways. So you still going to have to take the system apart, not just for the res change, but just for cleaning and maintenance. Now, if you're, Wild West out here, you just go ahead and let it run the full grow, then you'll have to worry about cleaning the buckets in between. But different strokes for different folks.
So that's what I did. Is I grew in a recirculating system, but then I just found that I was still using all DIY stuff, and there wasn't. There had to be something better than just a pail, than a bucket. Right? And so that's when we made the hydro bucket, right? That's why we made the hydro bucket, and we made access to it. And so essentially what this did was, we want access to the growing container, and we don't want to lift the top, so we put a reservoir outside of the tent. So we've just moved the reservoir and attached it right onto the hydro bucket. Right? I mean, so now with a hydro bucket, we don't need plumbing. We don't need an external reservoir outside the tent. Let's just put another tent beside that tent, right? Because now we can have our plants on top, and they can be scrogged. They never have to be lifted. They're treated just like a dirt plant. You never have to disturb it. And you have access, just like you have an external reservoir, but it's on the side. So there's a lot of benefits to doing this and getting into just skipping the recirculating system.
For those that are listening and don't see the actual visual, he held up just your normal, at first he held up your normal 5-gallon bucket that you get from like Home Depot or Lowe's, and it kind of had a pipe attachment to the side. And then he showed up his hydro bucket, which is a product that he created, and it kind of has like a lip. I guess is kind of the best way that I can think to explain, unless you have different words to explain that lip, but it gives you a way to access.
Now, speaking of lip, that's what I would call the Fantasia lips. Shouts out to Gucci.
Access the inside without you're not really having to remove a top at all, right? You can kind of get in there without having to lift up the plant like you had mentioned. So
yeah, that's it. It allows you to access the reservoir solution, get in there and check your pH. Because here's the thing: if you're growing in a bucket, how do you test your pH in your reservoir? In a convenient and functional way, because you have to keep. You have to test your pH, and you have to check, keep the parameters of your nutrient solution in check, just like your environment, right? It's everything. It's about when you're growing plants. If you give them the right environment, they will grow well. And there's 2 environments. There's your root environment of your plant, whether if you're soil or cocoa or hydro, it doesn't matter. You still have a temperature and a water, and you're managing that environment, and you're managing your plant environment. That's your light and your humidity and your temperature. So we have to manage that. We need an easy way to get into our solution and check it. We need to be able to remove fluid from it and put new fluid in. So when you're only using a 5-gallon bucket or a DIY job, it's very difficult to get in there. You have to disturb that top. You have to lift it and move it. And it can be done, but it's not really very convenient. With a hydro bucket, the external reservoir that is fluidly coupled, sharing the same walls and bottom, is one way to explain it. It is a 5-gallon bucket with more space added, and that external reservoir on the side has a lower access point, so you can see your roots. You can see inside. You can see what's happening, and you can access it comfortably. You can drop a hose in there. You can use a water pitcher. You can put your pH pens and your EC pens in there and test on a regular basis, all without ever touching your plant. So ever lifting it. So essentially, we made recirculating systems without all the pumps and pressure.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, viewer question was, if you're not doing RTWC and you don't have the hydro bucket, right, you're with the typical 5-gallon bucket, what's the easiest way to remove the water from the buckets?
I use a pony pump anyway. When you get into hydroponics, there's a few things that you need that are just going to make your life really nice and going to help you. I mean, just grow in a way that's, I say, let the pumps do the work. You don't have to lift anything anymore, and this is just well suited for certain people, certain grow styles, certain ages. I mean, there's a lot of people who can't carry big bags of whatever in and out of their house up and downstairs. So hydroponics allows you to plug a pump in and let it do all the lifting. I love a pony pump with a small end that you just drop in, and it sucks it out, and then you can add to your vessel, your water vessels again, right, to top everything up. But it's more than just the add and removing with a pony pump.
Okay, gotcha. Let's flip it up. Let's talk about water. So, water. Why did I say it like that? Water. Let's talk about water. What is the type of water that's ideal to use for this?
The best results that I've had are reverse osmosis water. RO water, it's just costly to create all RO water. You need an RO system, and there is some waste involved with it. It works the best, but it's not required. I don't use RO water. Again, I found my best results were coming from it, but I couldn't grow at the level at the size of my garden. I just couldn't keep up with that amount. I'm still a home grower, and I'm not ready to spend a few $1,000s on a massive RO system. That's out of reach for me right now. So I'm just I'm using tap water, and I'm sure to aerate it. It's a municipal water source. I put it in a 1,000-liter tote, so it sits there, has the chance to off gas. And then that's where I start. So I have good results with it. Results will be better if you do use reverse osmosis water.
When you say off gas, are you talking specifically about chlorine?
Exactly. You're going to have chlorine, and you're going to just you have that smell to the water when you get it. Obviously, it's treated right out of the facility when it comes out of your tap. For it is here. So once you leave it sit for a week, or you put a air stone in there, you can smell that. And that smell goes away, and it's just something that you can do to, and there are some products that exist out there at our local hardware store. There is I couldn't tell you what it is, but it was a fairly affordable product that made tap water suitable for plants and animals.
See, that's why I know my sense of smells a little bit off, because they always talking about the way the water smells. Water usually don't have a smell to me unless it's some fucked up water to me, but I don't know. See, that's what I be saying. They be smelling stuff I don't be smelling. It's probably those enhanced noses they have. Shouts out to the enhanced nose variety. They sensory types. Their smells high. You know what I'm saying?
I'm sure it's something that busts up the chlorine bond and maybe just helps it dissipate from the water. Because really, I think that's what we're trying to do. Is we don't want water that is going to kill live things. That's all we're really looking for. What's in the water is important. If you have a water source that is 400 parts per million, that's what it's starting at. Well, that's a problem because it contains a lot of stuff already. Right? Reverse osmosis, you take everything out, so you're starting at zero. So this is why it works so much better, is you have all the space in your water. Your water is essentially empty. Consider your water is your obviously your fluid, but it's what you're delivering to your plant as your battery. So when you start at zero or you start at 50 parts per million, you can, let's say you're building it up to 1,000 parts per million for your plants. That's 1,000 parts per million that you have full control over. If you're starting at 400, you have all kinds of stuff in there. You might already have high levels of magnesium and calcium or who knows what. So when you're just adding your 3-part or your nutrients to 400, it's problematic. Most tap water, most people, you're going to be 1 to 200, and that's fine. As long as it's not actively killing everything it comes in contact with, like chlorine does, right? It's meant to harbor any beneficials, so that your water's not alive. Well, we want our water to be alive. we don't want it to be dead. So we want our water to come and either RO out the chlorine and the stuff that kills beneficials in the water, or we want it to aerate it and just get that chlorine out of it, and then it's just water.
So we do need to get the chlorine out of it because, chlorine kills off beneficial microbes. It also kills off the bad microbes, right? Our hydroponics is a sterile environment anyways, and we don't really rely on that beneficial bacteria to uptake nutrients at the roots, so on and so forth, or what?
Right. Well, so there's two ways to grow. We don't necessarily keep it. I don't grow in a sterile environment. I know there are other companies that do it very well, but that lends to the big hydroponic recirculating systems that are in the industry. They're at an industrial standard where you have how many plants hooked up, how many vessels to your recirculating system? 10, 20, 50, right? You can't afford contamination anywhere, period. And a lot of the regulations don't allow for it. I mean, you have to prove that you can grow here in Canada where you're not going to jeopardize a large crop of plants with something. So being sterile on that level in a recirculating system is extremely important, I think, but not necessary. How I grow is with a live environment. I don't sterilize. I start with water. Again, I'll start with I start with my aerated tap water that's been sitting in my 1,000-liter tote, and then I'll mix that into 100 liters, and that does one of my flower rooms. That'll do 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, about eight or nine hydro buckets is one of my flower rooms. So I'll mix 100 liters at a time, and my starting point, I start sterile, and that is true, just to make sure the water going in and there's nothing harboring in there. So I start with a silicic acid or a magnesium sulfite, and so what that does is there's some benefits there for the plant, but it also puts a pH spike and makes it quite off the scale and not great for anything to be in. So that's where you always start in that direction. And then you add your nutrients to that. Once the nutrients are in there, then I will bring the pH into balance. Once the pH is in balance, then I'll add some microbes. I'll add microbial mass, and I'll add some hygrozyme root enzymes. So these are living things. So you want to make sure your pH is in check and it's not a hostile environment. Otherwise, they're just going to get fried, right? So once I
you heard how he said to do it. He got the water, put one thing in it, which I forgot what he said that thing was, but then he put his nutrients in, and then he balanced that. That's always going to be the order. Get your water together, you take the plant out the bucket. That's normally what I do. Depends on how I'm mixing. But then again, nowadays I usually just mix what I'm going to add to the bucket because it depends on what I'm doing. If it's a fresh bucket, say for instance, I noticed we had some problems, yeah, I'll just go ahead and throw everything out, boom, and start over. But I'll mix that in the gallon pitcher and then just add it back into a new clean bucket. That's why I got extra buckets. So whenever I see something don't look right in the bucket, I just go grab an empty, change them out, then fill the water up, and then add stuff back to it later through the top. Let's see. We can go ahead and hit a commercial real quick. Commercial. See, when I get an editor, they're going to edit out this little brief time of me changing stuff over, blah, blah, blah. And you dig, the little small talk can be erased, but, it's appreciated.
We kept plugging away with the weed deliveries, and we kept meeting different kinds of smokers, like this lady. She's an I'm only creative if I smoke smoker. She believes weed, and only weed, brings out the artist in her.
Would you like to hear some of my poetry?
Not really.
You really should. I have killed. I have helped kill. I have killed part of myself. I cannot change this. I must seek Buddha. I must seek Christ.
You must seek therapy. That's where I would go with that, but that's my own. The MacGyver smoker is a very handy guy to have around, especially when it comes to reefer.
man. We're out of papers.
All right, then get me a toilet paper roll, a corkscrew, and some tin foil.
We don't have a corkscrew.
All right, then get me an avocado, an ice pick, and my snorkel. Trust me, bro, I've made bongs with less. Hurry up.
And then you got your straight-up potheads. Now you can spot these people by their lack of motivation, mood swings, forgetfulness, and, of course, the dreaded low sperm count. I don't know which one of these categories we fall into, but I'll tell you this. We ain't no goddamn potheads. Shit.
You already had the bacon bag. Let's see, I'm like 30.
Which parent are you? In the bustling city of Nutriville, a group of extraordinary individuals has emerged, known far and wide as the superfood parents. They are on a mission to transform their families' lives through the power of nutrition, one delicious bite at a time. Meet Chef Lakita Marie, the culinary mastermind behind the Superfood Parents Playbook. With boundless enthusiasm, she welcomes you to embark on a thrilling journey to becoming a true superfood hero. But what exactly does that mean? In Nutriville, superfood parents are everyday heroes. These superfood parents lead the charge for better health, but not with capes. They lead with carrots, and whole food fats like avocados. And instead of masks, they lead with mangoes and berries. Fruits and vegetables are the disease-destroying arsenal of heroes. Are you a disease destroyer superhero for your loved ones? Fruits and veggies fuel the mission of heroes like Veggie Vixen. Are you a Veggie Vixen for your loved ones? Dedicated to ensuring their loved ones thrive on a diet rich in faves, fruits and vegetables. Here's your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to guide your family to superhero status by reaching the highest levels of health and wellness daily. Become a plant-powered titan, a superfood avenger, or even a face crusader by earning 5 points for every fruit or vegetable eaten. It's a fun-filled quest where nutrition meets excitement. All of the digital details are at superfoodparents.com for the full experience. Superfood Parents has also created workbooks, where you'll discover the tools you need for success. These workbooks give you the heroic strategies to craft your grocery list like a seasoned hero. Which means you now have a playbook to even track your weekly meals like a true champion. And engage in mind-bending nutritional education with word searches that will keep your family entertained and informed. So, are you ready to join the ranks of the superfood parents? Are you prepared to unleash the power of faith and make every meal a heroic endeavor? If so, flip the page of the Superfood Playbook and let's begin your journey to becoming the ultimate superfood hero.
To become a sponsor, just visit superfoodparents.com.
The great state of Missouri was founded August 10th, 1821. So it's founded in the snake year, just like Florida, just like Texas, which basically means if you're a snake, if you're a rooster, if you're born in ox year, this is a good location for you. But if you're born in pig energy, if you're born in the year of the pig, this is not the place for you to be living in the United States of America.
Give it gas when I'm dipping competition, getting past, living fast, furious, staying on track, never worry when I'm spinning, laughs better getting back, ride from a dog, alphabeted on us, you gon' get it back, never split this pack, whenever I witness cap, we ain't fucking with your fiction, facts, your conviction lacks, when I get up in my bag, I'ma spend, we ain't tripping off tax, clipping this tag, working on my wish list, cooking this cake, let me flip this stack, you a flash in the pan, while you relaxing, I can't, my team finna pack the sedan, putting tracks in the sand, pushing my craft for the fam, got the people all clapping their hands, putting cash in my brand, keeping my octane high, my graded premium, not 8-9 or 8-7, and when I run across state line, I'm 9-1, I gun it, clock great time, my time come, disappearing in the dark horizon, way I cut turns, I'm as sharp as diamonds, got them on tilt like a car's alignment, this is raw refinement, not a hard assignment, I'ma give it gas, give it gas, bitch.
Anyways, close that one off so we done paid all our bills. Now we can finish up this video. We're gonna increase speed a little bit more. You see they chopping it up. I ain't trying to take all day with you, so I ain't gonna try to take all day with you, so if you ain't ready for the ride, hold on.
Add those, then I feed out of that 1,000 liters or 100 liters, and I just pump into my hydro buckets, and that is their feed for the week.
Okay, gotcha. That was actually a question, was can you use beneficial microbes in DWC? And you just answered that. Yes, you can.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Right.
Now, what about the water level? What should the water level be within the system?
The water level is important, definitely, but it's more important in a recirculating system. In the recirculating system, you want that water level to never go above a certain level. So that's 2 to 3 inches below the bottom of your net pot, right? And basically what we're looking at it is the top portion of the plant has to breathe. Right? This is the whole dry out principle of drying out plants, right? Is it has to dry out from the top down, because that top third is really where the plants have a different process than the uptake portion. That's the below. So 2 to 3 inches below, always from the bottom of the net pot. You don't go above that in a recirculating system. If you're in a deep water culture, then you can. And I say that just because not on good garden practice, not on regular practice. When I fill up my hydro buckets, I always fill them up to about 1 to 2 inches below the bottom of the net pot. But sometimes I'm going away. And it's not a static environment. I know that fluid level is going down. It's going down pretty drastically in certain times in the grow cycle with uptake of different plants. So I know that if I want an extra day, then I will fill it up right to the bottom of the net pot. I'll get that extra 2 inches in there. Why not? Because I know the plant is going to say, oh, I'm kind of drowning, but it has no choice. That fluid is moving through it. And in a day, it's down to 1 or 2 inches. And then it's within 2 or 3 more days, it's down to only 2 or 3 inches left in the bottom of the hydro bucket, and then it requires service again.
One of the general advice that you hear every so often is talk about changing the reservoir every so often. You hear about it should be done every 7 days. Some people say you can do it 10 days. Everybody says you can do it 14 days. You can do it. So how often should the reservoir actually be changed?
Right. So again, this is a broad area of depending on how you're doing things. For home growers, right? No one wants to waste a lot of water. I mean, that's a very valuable resource. So we're always trying to conserve everything we can. And when I did grow in a recirculating system and I had that larger external reservoir, I was more grudging to change that solution because there was more of it. The whole principle of recirculating is you're using volume to move. I mean, the volume is what's moving through all the additional lines to move it through the tent and then back into the reservoir. So you need X amount of volume. That is nutrient solution. That is just there simply mixed to make things move. Where in a single bucket, you only mix what you're going to use and it sits there. So 1 to 2 weeks is when you should change your reservoir. If you're sterile, then there's more to it. You want you want to change it, but it's more of a system of how to grow. It's understanding a recipe in which to when to add nutrients, when to add water, when to pump it out. And I say every single week. And the reason why I say that is it allows you to refresh your plant, put everything back into parameters that they want to be in, and then at the end of the week, completely flush your plant and get it ready for the week again, if that makes sense. And I can go into detail on that. I do online on our IG page with some videos, but...
So what he's basically just said, just do a weekly res change just to keep things exactly where you think you would want them to be anyways. Like what I said, my perfect pH range is 5.5 to 6.3. Anything 6.4 or higher, I know I got to change my buckets out and at least readjust my pH. Other than that, water levels I'll let go for however long they go. But yeah, as long as there's water in there, they can sit for until the water goes. And just make sure that the pH is within range, because the plant will be doing what it does naturally with pH balanced water. So, as long as you know where your pH is standing and how the plant is able to uptake whatever it needs, because as long as it's within range, it'll be doing its own thing at its own speed. That's a good thing about DWC. As long as you know where your pH is at, you usually can sit back and just watch the plant, and then it'll show you anything else you need to do.
I'm happy to talk about that here as well.
Yeah, I mean, they can always visit the IG page to learn more about it in detail. And we got quite a few questions here to continue on to. So if you want to learn more details about that in particular, what's your Instagram?
It's HydroBucket or Visionary Hydroponics. We can be found on Instagram, and that's where we post a lot of videos on. I call it the Week in the Garden, where I show how I pump out and what I do for my 7 days in the garden that repeats each week.
Okay, cool. pH Let's talk about pH. pH is another hot topic. There's a general range that people can stay within for pH. That's the pH of the water solution. Can you talk to us about pH? What's the ideal range and so on and so forth?
Yeah, so pH is everything. pH is availability. So many people have seen the scales. Essentially, if you are at your range is 5.5 to 6.5 in hydroponics, in deep water culture hydroponics. Okay, let's just to be clear, because cocoa is hydroponics as well, and those are not the same pH ranges. So deep water culture hydroponics, you're 5.5 to 6.5. If you're in that range, your plant is not going to be stressed. It has availability to move water and function and availability to certain nutrients. So if 5.8 is ideal. If you're at 5.8, you have access to everything. Your plant has access to everything. If it goes below 5.8, you're not going to have access to the stuff that is at the higher end of the scale at 6.5. Just like if you go to 6.5, you're not going to have access to the stuff that's below 5.8. So you can float around. I mean, the plants know what to do. They don't have to just be right there. And if they're not there, oh no. If it's 5.5 to 6.5, it's good. And we keep it in range. As long as it's in range for 4 days, then you have the ability to check it and adjust it every 4 days. But you have to keep your pH in range. Number one.
What are some of the best ways to stabilize the pH? From my understanding, if you have air stones in there, your pH is more prone to drift. So what are some of the best ways that you can stabilize pH?
I hear this often, is that it causes drift. And, air stones in deep water culture, they're just part of deep water culture. They're always in there. And I don't always fight with pH drift. I think it's a combination of having nutrient solution that is well dissolved, having a happy environment, and not an environment that's too dynamic. I found I had more pH swing when I was in a recirculating system because I would have multiple plants, I would have multiple nooks and crannies, different things pulling. It just seemed like a more dynamic environment. I find when growing in individual deep water culture hydro buckets, I can stabilize it quite quickly if I really want to, because I have that nice access on the front of the hydro bucket. So I just use pH down, really, is what I do. I found by using magnesium sulfate or sulfite when I start my mix of my fluid, and then I bring that high pH down to 5.8 before I add my beneficials, I find those two additives seem to stabilize with a good soluble solution, right? A good soluble fertilizer. It has to be well soluble, because that's part of the problem I'm finding with certain things is if the solution is dynamic and it's not fully dissolved, and you mix it and then you put it in with your plant, now it's even more dynamic because the plant is uptaking water. The concentration of your solution could be concentrating, but if not everything is dissolved, you have an addition to your fluid that's happening. So when you balance it once, maybe it's just the air is creating a good environment to dissolve what hasn't been dissolved yet. And so that addition of dissolved particles into the water needs more balancing. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, for sure.
Yeah, because I can really balance my water, and it's good. It's once I make my notes and I get my if it's a plant that I'm used to growing, and I dial it in and I know the pH is in range, I won't even check it for 4 days, let alone balance it each day, right? It's just about using your paying attention to stuff and I really think dissolving things well.
Gotcha. Now with pH, a lot of people talk about another measurement, ppm or EC. What should the ppm or EC range be during the different stages of growth?
Right. So light, like so many people when we growers like to just push, and we're encouraged by so many packages, by nutrient manufacturers. But this isn't necessarily, I think it's a misunderstanding. You want to be in a vegetative state, in small plants in hydroponics, they don't need much, leafy greens, they're just after a bit of nitrogen. That is really what they're after. They don't have massive root systems. So you're under 400 parts per million, 500 parts per million. That does a lot for seedlings and clones under. Once you're into a vegetative state where you're growing a plant that you really want it to get going, you can go from, if it's bigger than a basketball, then I think you can push something at that point. If it's going to go from a basketball to 2 to 3 times its size, then that's a plant that could probably start getting up towards to 1,000 parts per million of vegetative nutrients. If you're switching your plant to a bloom nutrient at that point, you can go anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 parts per million. The 1,500 parts per million that's on the manufacturer's bottle, that's for people who enrich. So they are correct in telling us 1,000 to 1,500, but you have to understand that your plants need more when they're in a CO2 environment. They're going to use more. So that is what that reading is for. Most people, what I recommend when you start using a nutrient line is you start at half. Whatever they say, go half. And it's easy to give your plants a little bit more than the other way. But for the most part, if you're around 1,000 for biggish plants, whether you're in veg or bloom, you're gonna be in a good space.
Okay. And then talking about water temperature, the water temperature is too low, you can run into problems. Temperature is too high, you could run into problems. What should the temperature be of the water?
Right. So the temperature should be 68 to 72 Fahrenheit is what we're looking. That's kind of the ideal range. It can be lower. It could be anywhere down to below 64. You're going to have slower growth once you get below 64 degrees, and once you get above 76 degrees, you're really risking competition in there. And the reason for that is dissolved oxygen. When you have cold water, it holds oxygen. So that oxygen, the water is full of oxygen. It's a very happy, safe environment for good microbes and not for bad things. And as the water gets hotter and hotter, there's just not that much oxygen in it. That's why air stones are really important to get them in there and just bubble and keep that water cool. But yeah, you can be anywhere from 64, I'll say, to 78 on the very high side of things. But I recommend, again, not a sterile system. If you're doing this, you're going to want to do enzymes and certain additives to your grow, because these enzymes inhibit the ability for root rot and things to come into your zone. So that's important, right? You're not going to get the same yield if you're growing at 78, but you're not going to lose your plants to root rot. There's a big difference there. You're still going to have a yield. And for some of us, maybe your summer yield is you don't have as big of a yield in the summer because it's hot, and then you're going to rely on your bigger yields in the winter, right? So
okay, yeah, that's actually my main concern. And the reason why I haven't done DWC is controlling water temp. I mean, my natural house is like 80 degrees, so that's what my water temp would potentially be. Now, when you get into the high temps, you talked about root rot. It is one of the main things that people get when they're running into the high temps. You mentioned enzymes as a way to kind of help deal with that. Is there anything else that you can use to deal with root rot? I mean, I think hydrogen peroxide is something I've heard in the past. Is that true? Or
I think it's about not having a practice that doesn't allow it in the first place, right? And this is where we get into the conversation of why I just never went back to recirculating systems. I was sure I was going to. I made a recirculating system, then I made a hydro bucket, then I got the hydro buckets in my garden, and I said I got to hook these things up, and I just never did. I just put another tent and put more hydro buckets, and then another tent and put more hydro buckets, because the hydro bucket allows me to control temperature and not use a chiller 24/7. And why that is that you add on the first day of the week, and then you add in your ideal temperature of water, right? So this is different than a recirculating system. If you were to add 68 degree water in a recirculating system, it's going to go up. It's pumping water. You have one pump for sure, and it's pumping through a heat exchanger. Essentially, it's going through tubes that are in your hot environment, and then it's going into your vessels, your plant containers, and then it's draining out a drain line back to your external reservoir, where it's picked up heat. It's done its job. So people will need a chiller, because that water cannot go down. It cannot stay at the same temperature. It has to go up. So we go from 68 and we start going up. With a hydro bucket and a single deep water culture grow environment, you can sidestep that. So you can start with 68 degree water in a single deep water culture hydro bucket, and then in 4 days from when you first added your ideal solution, your parameters have been getting out of check. Your parts per million have been getting out of check, your pH and your temperature. They've all been sliding away from optimum. But every 4 days, you get to top it up with cold water. So again, every 4 days we get to make it perfect. You don't get to do that with a recirculating system. You just have to make it good. I mean, you have to keep it ideal. They kick on and off, but you're using more water and you're picking up more heat. Whereas a hydro bucket, you're really not adding any heat in an individual container, right? And so this allows us to. I still have a chiller, but I only use my chiller for an hour pre-mix, just to get my temperature of my solution to where I want it, and that's only for 3 months a year. The rest of the year, I use a heater because my water's too cold. Right. So if I was in a recirculating system, though, I'd be using my chiller all the time. I'd rarely use a heater. I would always be using the chiller. So that's just the difference. It's trying to portray the difference of getting your optimum temperature, your optimum pH, your optimum parts per million, and then put it in your deep water culture environment, and it's good for 4 days. Mix up some nice cold water, get it in there. It's good for another 4 days, right? We don't need a chiller. We may even be able to manage this of just cold water out of your tap, depends where you live, right? So this always allows us to keep that temperature in check.
Gotcha. Let's get deeper into chiller, because there was actually a lot of questions in regards to chillers. Can you talk to us about, how many watts is a typical chiller? I know it can get very expensive, like you said, if you're running a RDWC and you're running that chiller 24/7. Well, it can be pretty expensive there, and it might not be worth it for you. So how many watts is a typical chiller? How much does it cost? And how do you calculate the size of the water chiller you need for your system?
Right. So a water chiller, you need a water chiller. If you're going to get a water chiller, you need a chiller, and you need a pump to circulate that chiller. They don't come with their own pump, so you need a secondary pump as well. And that's hydroponics. There's pumps here and there, especially if it's recirculating. The ones here in Canada, they're based on horsepower. But that equates what I'm looking at to anywhere from 200 to 400 watts. I think is what you're gonna have for a water chiller. So that's another light, right? If that's running on a regular basis to keep more fluid at a smaller temperature, that could be another light. That could be another plant. So water chillers are necessary. Well, I don't know if they're necessary. Water temperature control is necessary, whether it's a heater or a water temperature. But a lot of people think just because you say deep water culture that you must have a chiller, right? And it's going to be an additional cost, and it's going to be all these additional things. And that's where I say, rethink individual deep water culture buckets, because we get to turn that chiller off. We get to save money in a lot of ways when getting away from a recirculating system.
Now, with the chiller, will nutrient salts impact the life of a chiller? That's one of the viewer questions.
I think, like anything, whether it's your pony pump or your anything, you want to flush everything out regardless, right? So how you do that in a recirculating system, I would say if you want your chiller to last a long time, you should probably disconnect it every once in a while and clean it, once or twice a week. Just to, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely not going to be great to have an internal system that never gets clean, that has a salt accumulation. You're going to have to do something.
Okay. And you mentioned the word flush. I want to talk about flushing the plant at the end of the cycle. So, highly controversial topic for sure. Some people say you should flush your plants, which is basically, in a hydroponic system, is you're removing the nutrient solution out of the system and just having plain water in there for a period of time, whether it be 5 days, some people say 7 days, some people say 14 days. What's your take on flushing? Do you recommend people to flush at the end of their cycle?
Yeah. In my experience, I've had the best results in a well-rounded feeding program that ends with pure water. So we can call that a flush. Or I think it's more important to put it this way. If you were to just pound nutrients into a plant and then simply flush it for 2 weeks, you're not going to get the same result as someone who fed it properly for the first 3 weeks, transitioned to something that was more appropriate for the next 3 weeks, and then for the final 2 weeks had another product, and then for that last week went to just water. That process is what gives a nice, smooth, clean product at the end with no bitterness or bad tastes or anything like that. It's not so simple as just a straight up flush at the end. That's the magic trick, in my opinion. There are some things that I can say about that time, though, which could confuse people or just make it more just not clear. Is those last couple weeks, think about a tomato. Think about a nectarine that gets to ripen on the tree, that gets to ripen on the plant. When you walk up to something and you pick it off and it's been tree ripened, and you pick it off and it doesn't have to ripen on the way. It doesn't have to cure and ripen. It's really got to stay on as long as possible. There's something to be said with certain strains and how you grow in allowing your plant to mature when it's not under pressure. It only can do what it can do at certain stages. So pounding it with nutrients and then just giving it a flush at the end isn't going to do it. You draw it out properly through all the portions of it, but then if you don't flush versus you flush, for me, it's more of a ripening process, right? You could have that week or two that just creates people speak to a smoother flavor or this and that. I don't know.
Flavor is something that I was going to bring up next. There's some people who swear by growing in soil, growing organically, that the flavor is going to be much better than growing hydroponically. And then there's hydroponic growers that say you're going to get the best flavor in the world growing hydroponics. What's your take on that? Growing hydroponically, the flavor versus growing in soil, the flavor you get.
I wish I could experience both on a side-by-side basis because I love science and I love knowing the truth. Well, the truth that I do know is if you are hydro and you crush it, you're going to blow doors off. People are going to say, wow, that's amazing. If you're in living soil and you crush it, people are going to go, wow, that's amazing. That's what's going to happen. In my personal experience, when you're in living soil, I've had some living soil stuff that has just been so flavorful and such a great experience. And I think it translates when you're straight up after... not oils and stuff, but organic product. That's a nice way to grow. But there's also the component when you're talking about hydroponics, you have full control, right? We're talking about a couple things where you got a couple topics there. It comes with leaving it to nature or taking full control, or hydroponics, we have full control, so we can really make it do exactly what it wants it to. We can give it everything it needs. This is what I like to say. I like to give it everything it needs to let it do what it wants to do at its full potential. And that's kind of a similar, mantra of organic soil. What I do know for sure is we grow for what's on the organics, not the organics. We specifically have strains that are for washing, and so we know that the expression of what we do and what we create as our final product is fantastic. And I'll put that up against anybody growing in anything. That being said, if someone has done their best to grow some amazing organic product for consumption, there may be something to make that better. In flower, but I can't speak to it, right? I really think it's it's a big conversation, and I say it's about what works best for the individual for growing. If you grow and you grow what grows well for you, and you have a good successful product in the end, that's a success, and it doesn't matter what you used, right? And the top growers in the different categories are all going to have a wow product. Every one of them, right? So it really, until the science comes out, until I could have more information, I'm going to say, grow it all.
Well said. So we have a lot of new folks that tune into my channel, and they're either just starting out in DWC or they're about to start out in DWC. What advice do you have for someone who's brand new to growing hydroponically?
Don't be intimidated with it and do it. Go out and get a single hydro bucket. This is the thing is people are intimidated by hydroponics, and rightfully so. They think that they need a chiller, they think they need a DIY and a drill, or they think they need pumps and pressure, and they're going to flood their house. There's so many things that turn people off hydroponics, and then say, or it's a price tag. All those things disappear if you just have $1,500. You could roll into with $1,500, and it's real simple, and you're going to crush it. So I tell people, we have a product that allows you to just try hydroponics without a big bill, right? You can get into a hydro bucket, net pot, hydroton, air stone, air pump. There's packages for under $100. You take it home and you get to just try deep water culture. And why I say it's not for advanced growers, it's for new growers, is just because it takes the grower out of the equation. How many times have you ever overwatered a plant or underwatered a plant? When you grow in deep water culture, that doesn't exist. There's no watering. You literally fill it up, you mix it, fill it up, and it's good. It has everything it needs. That's why deep water culture grows so fast. Deep water culture will grow in vegetative state 30% faster. So that's a significant difference when you're talking about dollars and cents on large scales. When you're talking about production, is 30% faster? Is that an extra crop? There's a lot of things that happen with that. But why I think deep water culture works really, really well for new growers is that you get to mix it, you get to put it in, and then it just has what it needs. You're not going to water. And you're going to have lifestyle as well. That was a big thing for me. You're going to be able to leave for a couple days and come back, and your plant's just sitting there growing. And you can conveniently check the parts per million, the temperature, and the pH. And if it's good, you're good for another couple days. You just leave. And when it comes back, so it has everything it needs. You are just there to give it what it needs. And when you do that, it goes crazy. Deep water culture grows like nothing else. So you just have to manage yourself. So just don't be intimidated. Just get your gear and try one plant. And I hear there's no going back.
Great stuff for sure. Yeah, the way you said it there and what you've said so far within this episode, I mean, you make me a little bit more confident to try it out. You know what I mean? Like I mentioned that I did have concerns. I think most of them have kind of been addressed, at least the way you explain it with the hydro bucket in particular, not running the DWC with a reservoir, and how it can be a little bit more beneficial in some ways, just doing DWC with the hydro bucket. So I might have to give it a try. Just might have to do that. So wrapping things up, how can the listeners find you? And what do you have upcoming in the future?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So we have, you can find us on Facebook, on YouTube, on IG. Most of the stuff in the garden is IG is my main platform. That's where I share, and then we get that from there onto Facebook. And then we are, trying to give YouTube some more love. But that's it. We have a website, visionaryhydro.ca. We're going to be updating our website. It's it could be polished. It's not great, but we're available for purchase on our website. We're available for purchase on Amazon and lots of retailers around. And we are trying to make a presence everywhere we can. Toronto Lift Expo coming up. We're going to have that. If we can make it down to Vegas, we will. We don't know if this is going to be the year for that, but then next year definitely we're going to be looking at doing more, all the big trade shows if we can, and any cups or anything like that next year. We hope to attend all of those in big fashion.
Awesome. Good stuff there. Well, I will provide a link to Mitchell's channel down in the description section below. If you enjoyed this video, click that thumbs up button. I know there's a lot of things that we didn't get to. There's some questions I had to skip over. Did we miss anything? Let us know down in the comment section below. And do you have any tips or tricks? What's your style? What do you do to kind of make the process a little bit easier? Let us know down in the comment section below. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. We release new episodes every single weekend. Usually it's on Saturdays. Sometimes it's on Sundays. If you're listening in on Apple Podcasts, please leave a rating and review. Creeping up towards 200 ratings and reviews. So if we can get there by the end of the year, I would be stoked. Thank you to everyone who has left a rating and review so far. Mitchell, thank you so much for coming on to the channel today, coming on to this episode. There's a lot of people that are really going to benefit from this information, so thank you so much for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. I could sit around and talk growing all day, and I just really appreciate the opportunity to connect with you and other growers. So
awesome. All right, have a good one.
Anyways, y'all know to go check out Mr. Grow It. He recently just had this video with Zaza. I suggest y'all go check out that big homie, because Zaza's been putting in that work these last few months. Appreciate that too. All gorillas down in his comment section. You know what I'm saying? Go check me out over there in the comment section. You'll see I'm throwing them gorillas in there, fucking with your boy. But let's see what else is in my video for today. Oh, that was it. So y'all know to go check out the Rumble. Shouts out to the Rumble. This will be over there too. Yesterday's video was actually doing pretty good. although you couldn't hear nothing I fucking said. Shouts out to having computer problems, but you know, it's a good video without me being nothing but on screen. Shouts out to the people that don't like me being on screen with you, because I'm watching the video with you. You dig? At least I'm there with you for the ride. Hell, you get the information that I was looking at, and now you get to see that, hey, I had something to say about